First of all, I want to thank my colleagues, Senator McConnell, Senator Capito, my colleague from the state of West Virginia, Senator Daines, Senator Inhofe, and my good friend, Senator Highcamp. This is a bipartisan approach. Not often do you see a bipartisan effort, a colloquy on the floor of the Senate anymore. And it should be, because we all have the same interest. Basically, how do we provide affordable, dependable, and reliable energy, which this country was built on? We've defended this country by having resources we could basically defend ourselves, and that resources come from what the good Lord gave us, and coal has been in abundance in the United States of America. We have fought every war. We have defended, we have energized, we have built the middle class, unlike any time in the history of this world. So now it comes to the point where there's a group, basically, that wants an ideological pathway to say we can do it differently. If someone came to me and says that we have this new great energy, and I'm sorry, West Virginia, I'm sorry, North Dakota, I'm sorry, Oklahoma, I'm sorry, Montana, we have this new energy, and maybe it's commercial hydrogen, which will be water vapor. That's wonderful. We'll figure a way. West Virginia, we'll embrace that. We'll figure a way to make it. We'll do something. We'll diversify. But that's not the case, Mr. President. The case is simply this. This country has depended and will depend, and even by this own administration's admission, that this country will depend on fossil fuel for at least the next 3 decades. It's in their EIA report. They're going to have it. Base load, and I think the Senator of North Dakota said, base load is simply this: something that'll give you power 24/7, day and night, rain or shine. There's only 2 things in the world that can do it: coal and nuclear. Gas is coming on, and gas will be a base load when the distribution lines and the pipelines are there to provide it. Right now it's not, but it's coming on strong. So just look no further than Japan. Japan was mostly moving towards nuclear. Fukushima happens. When that happened, Japan had to change. What did they do? They changed to coal. But they decided the new plants they would build would be ultra supercritical. That means 40% efficiency, burn at the highest levels to reduce the emissions. They're moving in technology ways. Now, what is this, the plan that we're talking about? We have our colleagues talking about existing source, which means they can't continue with what we have today, and new source, which means any new plant has to be built to certain standards. Carbon capture sequestration has not been proven commercially in not one plant in America. Yet these rules are based on using carbon capture sequestration. All we have said, some of us have said this: why don't you at least demonstrate that you can have that type of commercial operation, and it can withstand 1 year under commercial load, and show us those are the new limits you want us to meet. That, to me, is reasonable. And let me tell you this, Mr. President, if you were in the business of producing power and you desired not to do that, even though we had technology, then you would have to close your plant. I understand that. That's not the case. That's not the case. They can't show us technology and show us that it has a commercial, feasible pathway to be able to perform and provide the energy we need. There's no way you can do it. So I've said this: if it's unobtainable, it's unreasonable. That's all. That's all. If it's unobtainable, it's unreasonable. Don't expect me to do something that's never been done. If the federal government says, fine, we have $8 billion laying down at the Department of Energy, $8 billion that hasn't been tapped. Does that not tell you something? The private sector has not stepped up to take those types of loans and to use those types of loans to find the new technology for the future, because they don't believe the administration wants you to find any new technology that might be able to adhere to the standards they've set. So we sat back and we've done nothing. And then on top of that, they expect these plants 30 years from now, if they're expecting to get commercial power, electricity, fill the grid with power coming from coal for the next 30 years. Most of our plants average 50 years of age. They can't produce the power they're going to produce, and you're needing for this country to have for 30 more years. An 80-year-old plant won't do it. Just won't do it. So that means they come off the line, off the grid. When that comes off the grid, what we call dependable, reliable, and affordable energy goes away. Goes away. I've said this: someone needs to ask respectfully our president, this administration, the EPA, the DOE, if for the next 90 days not another ton of coal was delivered to a coal plant in America. Not another ton of coal, because, and I've said this to the administration, they've been very, very eloquently and basically telling the American people we don't like coal, we don't want coal, we don't need coal. If those were the facts, then make sure you tell the American people, if they didn't have coal for 90 days, what would the United States of America look like? Just tell me, what would it look like? Ask anybody what it would look like. 130 million people's lives would be in jeopardy tomorrow. 130 million people. This system could collapse. The East Coast goes dark. Now you tell me how you're going to fill that in. And if you're not willing to be honest with the American people and tell them that, don't make them believe that there's something that's not there, that you can run this off of wind and solar. We have a lot of wind in West Virginia, and we're proud of that. I'll give you an example. The hottest days this past summer, you know that real hot spell we had, 90 to 100 degrees? We have 17 acres of a wind farm on the top of a beautiful mountain in West Virginia, 560 megawatts. We have a coal-fired plant sitting there, the cleanest supercritical coal-fired plant on Mount Storm, 1,600 megawatts. Guess how many megawatts of power the wind produced during the hottest times of the summer when we needed their power? 2 megawatts. 2. The wind didn't blow. So hot and stagnant, doesn't blow. That poor little coal-fired plant was giving everything it got, running at 100% to try to produce the power the nation needed. I'm just saying the facts are the facts, whether you like it or not. So when this plan comes out and says now any new coal-fired plant being built has to build this, you can basically be assured they're not going to build any. When they're saying the existing plants have to meet certain standards, they won't invest and try to hit a moving target. So now what happens? For the 35 to 40% of the power, you're telling the United States of America, the people in this great country, that we've got, don't worry, we're going to take care of you. They're not going to have it. Well, we're not going to stand by and say, you know, we're not going to fight for that. You know, we're not only fighting for a way of life for West Virginia, we're fighting for a way of life for this country. This country depends on the energy we've been able to produce. They've always depended on our little state. North Dakota now, one of the best energy producing states we have in the country. Montana, Wyoming, Oklahoma. We've been the heavy lifters. We'll continue to work for this great country. We just need a little help. And that's all we're asking for. So I would say, ask the question, what would the country look like? What would it look like tomorrow? And the standards they're setting are basically unreasonable, totally unreasonable because they're unobtainable. So the impact is going to be devastating, basically. The system is going to be to the point to where you can't depend on it and it's not reliable, and we don't have the power of the future yet. Maybe your children or grandchildren might see that. I hope so. But until that time comes, when you're going to transition from one to the other, make sure that it's a smooth transition. Make sure that it's one that's a dependable transition. Make sure it's one that keeps this country the superpower of the world. If you don't, I'll guarantee you, we will be the last generation. The last generation that stands before you as a superpower, saying that we are energy independent. We're not fighting wars around the world, basically for the energy this country needs. We have the ability to basically take care of ourselves. We can be totally independent energy if we have an energy policy that works, but it has to be realistic. This is not. That's why I'm totally opposed to this new power plan which comes out. It's a shame that we have to rely on the courts to protect something we should be doing in the halls of the Senate. It's a shame that the courts have to step in to protect us. It really is. So with that being said, I would yield the floor, and I thank my colleagues for being here on this important issue.